I never imagined the day would end as it did. It began like any other morning in my lifelong home of Willow Bay, a peaceful coastal town true to its name. Pale sunlight filtered through my bedroom curtains, and I could hear distant seagulls over the water. The familiar aroma of coffee brewing drifted from the kitchen. Everything seemed calm and ordinary, yet beneath that serenity, my heart carried a weight I couldn't shake. Growing up, faith was woven into daily life. The old stone church by the waterfront was my second home from childhood. I could still picture myself as a little girl in a Sunday dress, swinging my legs from the pew and singing hymns with innocent fervor. But as I grew older, my faith became more complicated. I still attended Sunday service and whispered prayers at night, but I struggled with doubts I was afraid to voice. I believed in God desperately, in fact, but I wondered if God could truly love someone as flawed as me. Every sharp word I regretted, every bad choice, every secret sin weighed on me like stones. I often asked for forgiveness, yet rarely felt worthy of the grace I read about in Scripture. That morning, those familiar doubts clung to me. I stepped onto the porch with my coffee, watching dawn light dance on the bay, and whispered a shaky prayer. Lord, are you there? I want to feel your peace today. A cool breeze rattled the willow branches, and for a moment sunlight broke through the clouds to warm my face. I tried to take it as an answer, a quiet reassurance that I wasn't alone. With a sigh, I got ready for work, hoping that staying busy would keep my anxious thoughts at bay. My best friend, Tina, could sense my unrest as soon as we met at our favorite little bakery for tea. We had been friends since we were 5, and she knew me better than anyone. That morning, she greeted me with a hug and an immediate question. Rough night again, Clara? I managed a faint smile. Just the usual doubts, I admitted, stirring my cup. With Tina, I never had to pretend everything was fine. I was up half the night thinking about, well, life, God, whether I'm doing any of this right. Tina's eyes softened. Sometimes I feel that way too, she said. But when doubts creep in, I pray for trust. Every time, God eventually gives me peace. It's not always instant, but He hasn't failed me yet. I nodded, trying to let her words sink in. We finished our tea, and as we stood to leave, she pulled me into a quick hug. Be gentle with yourself, Tina whispered. God isn't done with you, Clara. You're not a lost cause. Those words stayed with me the rest of the day. God isn't done with you. I carried her encouragement like a small flame in my heart as I worked my shift at the Willow Bay Library. It was a slow afternoon, and between helping the occasional patron, my thoughts wandered back to moments from our friendship. One memory surfaced clearly, a balmy summer night when we were 17. We had snuck out to the old pier after curfew, armed with a Bible and a bag of marshmallows, rebellious on the surface, but really just two girls searching for something sacred. We spread a blanket on the weathered planks and lay on our backs, gazing up at a sky full of stars. The Milky Way arched over us like a silver ribbon, and fireflies glimmered in the reeds by the shore. In the hush, Tina whispered, "How can anyone see this and not believe there's someone out there, watching over us?" I turned my head and saw her eyes shining with wonder, reflecting the starlight. In that moment, her faith felt as tangible as the humid summer air, and for a little while I felt it too, a bright hope that God was right there with us under that vast sky. Yet, even on that magical night, I remember feeling a pang of fear, afraid that our sense of God's closeness would fade with the dawn. Often it did fade. Those moments of certainty were like fireflies, beautiful and bright, but so fleeting when I tried to hold on to them. Dusk fell by the time I closed the library and headed home. A light drizzle began as I drove through the quiet streets. I hummed along to a worship song on the radio to calm my nerves, but a chill of unease had settled over me. I murmured, "Lord, help me trust that you're here with me," as I turned onto the narrow lane toward my house. Then everything happened at once. A blur of brown flashed in my headlights, a deer darting onto the road. I yelped and jerked the wheel sharply. The tires skidded on the slick pavement. In the split second that followed, I heard the screech of metal and felt a violent jolt as my car careened off the road. There was a deafening crash, a burst of pain, and then nothing. I opened my eyes, or thought I did, into pure darkness. I was standing upright, though I knew I'd just been in my car. There was no car now, no rain, no sound at all except a soft thrum like a distant heartbeat. Panic flared inside me. Am I dead? I wondered. I touched my arms, my face. No blood, no injuries. Just me, whole and unhurt, floating in a void. Hello, I called, my voice echoing into the emptiness. No answer. I felt utterly alone for the first time in my life. Then, far ahead, a pinprick of light appeared. My heart leapt. I fixed my eyes on that tiny glow as it grew brighter and nearer, expanding from a star to a glowing radiance that pushed back the darkness. Warmth rolled over me in gentle waves. The light was brilliant white and gold, yet I could look at it without pain. It enveloped me, and in that instant, every fear, every burden I'd ever carried evaporated. I began to sob with relief as a peace beyond understanding flooded my soul. Within the light, I felt an embrace around my very soul. A presence was there unseen, yet overwhelmingly real. Then a voice spoke, not aloud but directly into my heart. Clara. It felt like a father or mother calling me home. I knew that voice, though I'd never heard it before. God. I responded soundlessly, trembling. I expected judgment. I remembered every sin, every doubt, as if they were etched on me, but the light around me only pulsed with love. I am with you, the voice said. Do not be afraid. At that, my last shred of fear melted away. I felt known completely, and still utterly loved. My heart overflowed with joy. I found myself laughing and crying at once. Every shame and guilt I'd carried for years fell away. I knew I was forgiven. A soft radiance glowed beneath my feet, as if I stood on a calm, glassy sea reflecting a new dawn. Gentle colors of gold and blue shimmered in the air, and indescribable beauty stretched out before me beyond a nearby horizon. I yearned to step forward into that holy realm and remain there forever in the embrace of the light. But then, through the stillness, I heard a different voice crying out, a familiar voice echoing as if from far away. Clara, please. Please come back. I need you. It was Tina. In the light, I somehow saw her. She was in a hospital room, hunched over my broken body, holding my hand and weeping. My heart wrenched at the sight. The presence holding me understood my tug of emotions. Your time is not finished, beloved. Will you return? They still need you, and you have more to do, the gentle voice said. I looked back at the radiant horizon of light, then at the vision of Tina sobbing by my side on earth. I thought of all the people I loved, my family, my friends, my community. In that moment, I knew my answer. I'll go back, I whispered. I'm not ready to leave them. The light around me seemed to glow even warmer, as if in approval. Remember, the voice said softly as everything began to fade, I am with you always. In the next instant, I was gasping for breath. My eyes flew open to blinding hospital lights and the clamoring of voices. Pain crashed down on me, every part of my body hurt, yet I was alive. Doctors and nurses stared at me in astonishment as I choked in a gulp of air. I turned my head and saw Tina at my bedside, tears streaming down her face. The moment our eyes met, she let out a joyous cry. I was back. The days that followed were a blur of recovery. I had a severe concussion, a broken arm, and a host of other injuries, but I didn't care. I had been given a second chance. The doctors called it a miracle that I'd survived at all. My heart had stopped for 2 minutes after the crash, yet here I was, awake and healing. I knew it was more than just luck that brought me back. When I was strong enough to talk, I told Tina everything I remembered about the light and the voice. She listened with eyes wide and full of tears. When I finished, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "I felt his presence there with us, too. I prayed so hard, and he heard. He brought you back." We both cried together, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Maybe he brought you back for a reason," she said softly. I nodded. I was sure of it. Back home, neighbors and church friends stopped by with casseroles and hugs, calling me a miracle. It was humbling and a little overwhelming. I knew God had worked in ways they couldn't see. In those weeks of recuperation, I felt profoundly different. Joy and peace would swell in me unexpectedly at sunrise, in church, even just tasting my mom's cooking. I would find myself in tears, humbled by the simple fact of being alive. The fears that used to keep me up at night were largely gone. Death no longer felt like a terror. I had seen a glimpse of what lay beyond, and it was more beautiful than anything on earth. More than anything, I felt a new sense of purpose. I prayed for guidance, asking, "What now, Lord? What do you want me to do with the life you gave back?" The answer that formed in my heart surprised me. Go. It was just a quiet stirring at first, the idea that I was meant to step beyond the comfort of Willow Bay. As I regained my strength, that feeling grew stronger. I realized I wanted to spend my life sharing the love and hope I had found. And maybe that meant making a change. One cool autumn afternoon, a few months after the accident, I walked with Tina along the bay. Gathering my courage, I told her, "I feel like God is leading me to leave Willow Bay for a while, to start fresh somewhere." She looked at me with concern. "Where would you go?" I took a breath. "Idaho. I know it sounds strange, but I've been in contact with a church there in a town called Silverton Valley. They need volunteers for their community outreach program." I applied, and they accepted me. Tina's eyes brimmed with tears, but she managed to smile. "Only you would nearly die and then decide to move across the country," she said, laughing softly. Her laughter turned into a sniffle. "I'm going to miss you so much. But if God is calling you, you have to go." She hugged me tight, and I held on, both of us crying quietly by the water. I promised I'd call and visit often, and that this wasn't goodbye, just a new chapter. A few weeks later, my parents and Tina waved goodbye as I drove away from Willow Bay. It was harder than I'd imagined to leave the only home I'd ever known, but I felt an undeniable excitement too. I drove for several days. My eyes brimmed with tears as the outline of Willow Bay vanished in my rearview mirror, but with each mile my excitement grew. Flat plains rose into rugged mountains, and cloudy skies gave way to bright, open blue as I traveled westward. I played my favorite worship songs and old hymns, letting the music keep me company on the open highway. With each mile, I prayed, sometimes singing praises through happy tears, other times nervously asking if I was really doing the right thing. More than once, I found myself laughing with amazement at the journey unfolding, trusting that God was leading me exactly where I needed to go. Silverton Valley welcomed me with cool, pine-scented air under a bright blue sky. The town was small, a cluster of homes and shops nestled between gentle green mountains, with a silver river running alongside it. As I drove down the one main street, a couple of locals waved from a porch as if I were a familiar face. Their simple kindness made this unknown place feel a touch more like home. I soon settled into a tiny cottage at the edge of town and started my work at the community center run by the local church. My days suddenly filled with serving hot meals to families in need, tutoring rambunctious children after school, and listening to the struggles of folks who came through our doors. I also found myself visiting the nearby hospice, holding the hands of those near the end of life, praying with them, or sometimes just sitting quietly as they slept. It was deeply meaningful work, but at day's end, when I closed the door of my little cottage, the loneliness would creep in. One frosty evening, not long after I arrived, I sat on my porch under a sky littered with stars. Instead of the smell of salt water and the sound of seagulls, I had pine trees and the distant call of a night bird. I felt very far from Willow Bay. That day I had struggled. Some of the longtime volunteers were wary of the new girl, and a few of the kids acted out to test my limits. Exhausted and homesick, I wrapped a quilt around myself and whispered into the cold air, "God, I need you. I'm trying to follow you, but I feel alone here." My breath puffed white in front of me. I closed my eyes, fighting tears. Just then, a memory of a Bible verse floated to mind like a leaf on the breeze. "Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." A warmth unfurled in my chest. I opened my eyes and looked up at the stars, remembering how I'd once seen God in a sky like this. In that moment, I felt a gentle assurance that I was exactly where I needed to be and that I was not alone. From then on, things slowly got easier. I made friends at the church and the center. I learned the rhythms of the town and earned the trust of those around me. Even the gruff volunteer who had been cold to me eventually smiled and admitted he was glad I came. I shared bits of my story when it felt appropriate, and I saw hope light up in people's eyes. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up at the center, a young mother named Alicia lingered behind after the others had left. She looked troubled, so I offered a listening ear. Haltingly, Alicia confided that she had lost her mother the year before and had been terrified ever since, terrified of death, of being without her mom, of what might, or might not, come after this life. I gently shared with her a bit of my own story, telling her about the light I saw and the overwhelming peace that washed over me. I admitted that I had been afraid too, but that experience showed me that God's love is real and that death is not the end. As I spoke, Alicia's eyes brimmed with tears, but I could see some of the fear melting away. She squeezed my hand and gave me a trembling smile. "For the first time since Mom died, I feel hope," she whispered. We hugged tightly. In that embrace, I thanked God for allowing my journey to give comfort to someone else. Moments like this made it clear to me. This was why I had been spared, why I was here. Nearly a year passed. One summer evening I hiked up a gentle hill overlooking the valley. Sitting on a rock, I watched the sun set in a blaze of pink and gold. I thought of Willow Bay and of Tina. I'd written her just a week before, sharing how much I'd grown. I thought of the frightened, uncertain person I used to be, and smiled. As the first stars appeared, I whispered a prayer of thanks into the dimming sky. God had led me every step of the way. In the silence that followed, I closed my eyes and felt a familiar presence nearby. It was as if that heavenly light were still with me, glowing softly within. I could almost hear the beloved voice whisper in my heart, "I am with you always." A tear of joy slipped down my cheek as I let those words wash over me. God had been with me every step of the way, just as He promised. I realized my old fear was gone. I no longer worried whether I was worthy of God's love, or what would happen when I died. I knew, deep in my soul, that I was beloved and that heaven awaited in His perfect timing. If the light came for me again tomorrow, I would be ready unafraid. But until that day, I intended to live fully, to shine the light of God's love in this world as best I could. I knew now that grace meant I was fully known and still completely loved, and that was the truth I wanted to share with everyone. As the stars multiplied above, I rose and took one last look at the valley below. The town's lights glimmered like a cluster of fallen stars on the earth, guiding me home. I wrapped my arms around myself against a gentle night chill and began making my way down the hill. In the quiet, I felt that familiar presence walking beside me, as surely as if I could feel the glow. I smiled in the darkness, fearless and full of hope, carrying the light within me wherever I went.